watch one Lunatic, one Icepick. Obviously, you can't find it on YouTube. You gotta go on Best Score. Alright, I know that guy was like drugged and he's like tied up. Yeah, he's naked, obviously.
Oh god. Oh god. Oh god. Oh god.
Oh. That's gonna head off. Oh no, I'm done. I don't know if I can keep watching this. This is real?
Yes, this is real.
Ah! Ah!
You want to stop.
Ah! No! I'm done. I'm done. Fuck that.
Oh my god. Oh my.
Welcome back to part 2 of the Halloween special in the Luca Magnotta case. I really hope that you didn't go searching for any videos. We are going to be talking about what happened in them. I will be describing it in not detail because it's disgusting. I'm just going to give you the bare minimum facts about the videos, but you're not missing out on anything. Please don't feel like you need to go and search for these videos and watch them. Basically, we in the last video discussed his early childhood and the beginning of all of this. He is the vacuum kitten killer. He's got a Facebook group of people who are actively trying to find him, actively trying to stop him from hurting anyone or any other animals, and we've got the police on the other side who really aren't doing anything about it. They are seeing this as just an internet thing. And then we also left off with The Sun, which is a British newspaper agency, newspaper journalism place, who confronted Luca face to face, and one day later got an email from somebody who we know now was Luca, threatening that the next video isn't just going to contain animals, it's going to be humans. So from there, the Sun actually gave all of this information, including a copy of the threatening email, to the British authorities. The British authorities let us down, as well as the Canadian authorities. They ignored it. They said it's out of our jurisdiction, and so they just ignored it. The group thought that maybe they weren't being detailed enough, and so they thought, okay, they just need more evidence. If we just get more evidence and we present it in a better way, the police will listen to us. And so what they did was they did a very intricate file on Luca, as well as the vacuum kitten killer. So they matched clothing, they matched furniture, they matched posters from the videos to personal pictures of Luca. Another thing that we now know is that in the original vacuum kitten killer video, he had this like Russian female voice conversation in the background, and it kind of seemed like the video was made in Russia. But what he did was he just dubbed a Russian television show over like the audio, so it sounded like the person who made the video was Russian and in Russia. Another thing which confirmed the fact that Luca was actually living in Montreal was that they matched street lamps. So they looked at a recent photo that he had posted, and they saw in the background that there were certain landmarks and interesting street lamps. And so what they did was they went to Google Maps and they looked at every single street corner, every single intersection, until they found those particular street lamps, because he couldn't manipulate these certain things. So it was confirmed that Luca was actually in Canada. He wasn't in Paris, he wasn't in Miami, he wasn't in LA, where he was trying to trick people about his location. He was actually in Canada. Then another video would surface. It wasn't a snuff video just yet, but it was a video about Luca, and it wasn't made by this group. It was a video made by Luca about Luca, and it was basically saying Luca Magnotta is a dangerous psychopath. He's a serial killer. Obviously the Karla Homolka rumor, and it was basically celebritizing him rather than being a model or the Prince of Canada like he's once described himself, but instead celebritizing himself as a serial killer and as a psychopath. But at this point we knew, or at least know, that Luca hadn't killed any humans yet. This video, like all of the other hyping things that he's done before he's released the actual thing, is a foreshadowing thing. You know what I'm saying? It's something that he's hyping himself. It's something that really, really should have warned people if the actual threats of killing people wasn't warning enough. Because the group were like, okay, he's now made a threat against humans. He said that he's making another video. The police aren't listening. What do? They literally applied for a warrant themselves. I didn't know that civilians could do that, but they did that. But it was rejected. Shortly after, these fake profiles started hyping another video. They started hyping a video called One Lunatic, One Icepick. And this is probably the video, if you've ever heard of this case, that you would have heard of. One Lunatic, One Icepick. At the time that these fake profiles were saying, have you guys seen One Lunatic, One Icepick? Or someone send me One Lunatic, One Icepick. I've been looking for it for weeks. The video didn't even exist yet. So that it's obvious that it was Luca, again, hyping a video that didn't even exist yet. Before the video was officially released, there was a photo released, and it was of this poster in the background, the typical purple hoodie, with the hood over his face, and he was holding an ice pick. One of the accounts which was hyping this video before it even existed commented, I hear it's pretty disturbing. And before the official release of One Lunatic, One Icepick came out, there was another website posted, and I'm pretty sure this was Luca again, because it had a list of every single news article about the kitten killer that was ever posted, kind of like he was boasting about it. But this is what it said. It says, Luca Magnotta is an extremely dangerous psychopath. He is sick. He is incapable of feeling remorse. Psychopaths can appear very charming and look beautiful, but beware, they are cunning and highly maniacal. I think it's really interesting that even though he is trying to warn people, I think it's so interesting that in all of these things he feels the need to make himself seem better than what he is, more luxurious than what he is. And in this particular one, I just think it's interesting that he felt the need to add beautiful in the description of himself. 24 hours after this was posted, the One Lunatic, One Icepick video came out, and it went for 11 minutes. It begins with a man who is laying tied to a bed. He's alive at that point, but then there's an edit and it skips to a part where he is deceased. The video skips to a part where Luca is on top of him with an ice pick, continuously stabbing him. He then uses a knife to dismember this man's body, actually cutting it into pieces. And then the video shows a dog eating part of this man's body. Luca then begins to rape this man's body parts, his torso, his bottom half, his limbs, and all the while there's a song playing in the background. He then begins to eat part of this man's body by putting a fork in his anal cavity. This snuff video that was being hyped terrified people because it was real. And they started calling the police. People all around the world started calling the police, and the police ignored it. These reaction videos are enough for me to know that I am not the kind of person who needs to watch these videos. I'm already mentally, vulnerable. And a lot of the people who are watching these videos are young people who think it's the next gruesome thing. I'm gonna film myself watching this video because it'll be funny for people to watch my reaction. But instead of the usual reaction video where at the end of it you're like, haha, suck shit, you just scared the shit out of yourself by watching a scary video, instead, the reaction videos for one Lunatic, one Icepick end in kids crying, vomiting, gagging, shaking. A common theme for all of the reaction videos are the person who watched it says, please don't watch this video. I thought I could watch it, I thought I could be, they just say, please don't watch it. I know you will get curious and you'll try to watch it. Don't watch the video. So the police just thought this was an internet hoax, and they don't pay attention to things that happen on the internet because it's just the internet. And you would think that we're in modern times. We're not in the beginning of the internet where everything is fake. We know as a society that things are real, and police still don't pay attention to them. So at this point they were like, yeah, stop calling us. It's fake, it's a hoax, don't worry about it. Until 4 days later, a janitor would see a suitcase and he would be like, that's a nice suitcase, I want that suitcase. He walked closer to it and he realized there was a foul smell and that there were maggots coming out of the suitcase. And so he got a neighbor, and when they opened the suitcase, they saw that there was a torso in there. There was no head, it was just a torso. And so they called the police. He also noticed that that same foul smell was coming from the apartment which was just adjacent to his door. He mentioned that to the police and they swarmed this apartment. He said it was an overwhelming smell of rotten meat. The police then came out and showed him pictures of an Asian man that he didn't recognize. He said he saw the police walk past with all of these thermoses, and he said that even though no one said that there were body parts in these thermoses, you could tell because of the overwhelming smell that passed you when the thermoses passed you. Luca then sent the left foot of the man to the Conservative Party of Canada. He marked this package with a red love heart. He then tried to send the left hand by the post, which was intercepted and stopped. They then found all of this man's belongings in an alley and a dumpster, and also found security footage of Luca dumping this stuff. So the police swarmed Luca's apartment. The rent was paid up until June 1st, but there was nobody there. It had been cleared out. There was a fridge in there was a mattress in there, all of which had blood on them, and including the bathtub, there was blood there. And then when they looked in the closet, they opened the door and there was a message in the closet, and it was written in red ink. The message said, if you don't like the reflection, don't look in the mirror. I don't care. Luca was gone, but in all of the packages that the police received, they had notes with them. Only one note was revealed to the public. They kept the contents of all of the other notes private because they were scared that there would be a copycat killer. So the note that was revealed to the public was a note which claimed that there would be more victims and that there were 6 body parts to be mailed. On June 5th, a right foot would be sent to St. George Elementary School. And on that same day, the right hand was sent to False Creek Elementary, and both of these packages were confirmed to have been sent from Montreal. And then 1 week later, an anonymous tip would come in showing the police exactly where the man's head was, on the edge of a creek. But what actually makes this case go from sickening and depraved to heartbreaking is knowing who the victim was. And of course, this shouldn't happen to anyone. And of course, getting to know the victim makes it that much worse. But this breaks my heart. This is so sad. The victim's name was Jun Lin. He was a Chinese student who had come to Canada to study. He worked in his local convenience store, and he would send back money to support his mum and dad and his sister. This was, as in moving to Canada from China for Jun Lin, was his dream. He already had a similar degree in China, but he wanted to come to Canada to study, to live. He saw this as a really good, and it was a really good opportunity. And when he broke the news to his mother, she was obviously worried, but she said that she was filled with joy because her son was following his dreams and taking such a huge step. She said that she was excited for him because this is all he's ever wanted. So Jun Lin came from China to Canada to study science and engineering and IT. And even though he was a 33-year-old man, his mother was worried about him. They were a very close-knit family. One of those mothers who always worries and needs to know where her son is. And he was this bubbly, optimistic, really gentle, kind man. Because his mother was so worried, he would FaceTime his mother every single day. He gave her Skype tours of his apartment, of like random parks in Canada, of the city. Yeah, he was in everyday constant contact with his mother and his family. One of the last messages that he sent to his mother was that, "Don't worry, I'm safe. Canada is beautiful." And one of the last pictures he took was of just a regular park that you and I would probably not even look past. But he wrote, when he sent the picture, he wrote, "Isn't this beautiful? Like, this is the most beautiful park I've ever seen." He had only been living in Canada for a year. But even though he had been in Canada for such a short period of time, he'd already made so many friends, like good friends, to the point where when he didn't return text messages one night, they actually got really worried. In fact, one of his friends got incredibly worried because he was having a conversation with Jun on the 24th, and around 9 p.m. he just stopped replying. They tried calling Jun Lin the next day and it was to no avail. So they went to his work, and his work said he didn't show up for his shift, which is not like Jun Lin because he is known to be reliable, and apparently he had never just not shown up to a shift. So his friends were that worried about him that they took initiative and went to his apartment. And when they got to his apartment, they noticed that his phone charger was still there, his backpack was still there, and also he had a cat, and his cat was unfed. So they were understandably really worried. So his friends actually called the police, and they called the police with the intention of reporting Jun Lin as missing. But the police were basically saying, look, he's an adult and he has the right to go missing. But his friends argued with them. His friends were like, no, like, he's not like this. He wouldn't just go missing. Like, you need to do something about this. But the police were like, don't want to hear it. So his friends describe him as being loving, caring, always smiling, and they said that he didn't do drugs or drink alcohol, but his favorite thing to do would be to go out with his friends to dinner, and his favorite food was Korean barbecue. And they also said that he loved playing a Chinese card game, which translates to 3 Kingdoms Kill. Also, something that came out later, which we will talk about in more detail later, was that Jun Lin was gay, but his parents didn't know. In fact, he was in a long-term relationship, and the relationship ended just under a week and a half before he went missing. The reason his relationship ended was because his parents didn't know, and his culture and his parents and just everything pressured him into marrying a woman. And so he knew that even though he loved this man, that he was expected to marry a woman. But the thing is that even though he had ended the relationship with his partner, he was still texting his partner every single day. They were texting around 50 text messages a day. The guy that I'm seeing texts me maybe once a day. So they were still texting pretty frequently, to the point where they would give each other good morning text messages. It was a breakup, but you could tell that they still really cared about each other. And his friend said that if he was looking for a relationship, it would need to be with someone who had commonalities. And so the fact that Jun Lin was murdered by Luka Magnotta was confusing to everyone. They have nothing in common apart from the fact that they might be attracted to men. So everyone's confused. How did Jun Lin end up in Luka Magnotta's presence? How did they end up together that night? There was no evidence that they had ever texted, no evidence that they had ever called or communicated on any social media platform ever. There is no evidence that these two had ever met before that night. There are a couple of reportings which say, and this isn't something that is mainstream to this case, but there is maybe 1 or 2 podcasts which have said that Luka put up a Craigslist ad. And I think this is coming from the trial, because this is Luka's excuse for it, or reasoning for it, or side of the story, that he had posted a Craigslist ad that he was looking for sex. But one of the reportings of this, and I didn't watch the trial, I don't have access to the trial because the trial had a media block, but one of these podcasts actually said that Luka didn't ask for sex, that the Craigslist ad was very specific in saying no sex whatsoever, nothing sexual, that he was just looking for a fit male to come and help him. You could take this either way. It could go either way. First of all, we know that Luka has in the past said absolutely no intimacy, do not touch me, no, don't touch me. The fact that the ad might have said this isn't anything sexual, no creeps, I just need a fit male to help me in this whatever, that could be plausible, because we know for a fact that he has in the past said do not touch me, no intimacy, whatever. But then you could take it the other side. Luka has done porn before. Porn has been performative for him. It's been a way for him to get attention. We know that one Lunatic, one Icepick, was a video that was performative for him, was a performative act for him to get attention. So it might have been one of those things where he would have even pretended to want sex in a way to make this happen for him. We also know that Jun Lin was gay. So it could be either way. We'll never know. I haven't seen this Craigslist ad. There's no proof that I've seen. And obviously I don't have access to the trial. So how he ended up there, no one knows. And also there is another side of that story coming from the parents. But we also have to keep in mind that his parents wanted him to marry a woman. So they might be in a little bit of denial. But basically the parents have said that they genuinely believe that there was no relationship, no friendship, and that they had met that night. They said that Jun Lin was a very caring person who always wanted to help people. And he also was one of those people, you know those people who they don't see bad in people, and it can make them quite vulnerable to being taken advantage of because they don't foresee people being evil. Jun Lin was described as being that way. He just wanted to help people, and it wasn't even in his mind that something horrific could happen to him. So how he ended up there is really the only mystery. We could take what Lucas said, we could take what some reportings are saying, or we could believe what the family says, but there are all things that are plausible there. But it doesn't matter because he was there. Either way, Jun Lin and Luka Magnotta would cross paths that night. When Luka was found, he had fled to Berlin. And when police arrested him, they arrested him in an internet cafe. And they arrested him while he was Googling his own name. When he was arrested, he said that he did it, but he did it because he thought that Jun Lin was from the government and that the government was spying on him. And so he's making all of these reports now, again, of auditory hallucinations and visual hallucinations that would come with being a paranoid schizophrenic. This all set the base for his plea of not guilty due to reasons of insanity. That basically means that he acknowledges the facts of the trial are facts, but he's also saying that he's not responsible due to diminished capacity. He said that the reason he mailed parts of Jun Lin to the government was because he thought Jun Lin was from the government, and that was his reasoning behind it. Which, I mean, can make sense, but it also doesn't explain why the head was in the location that it was found in. It also doesn't explain why 2 body parts were sent to primary schools, different primary schools, which have no connection to the case whatsoever. Jun Lin's body was cremated and buried in a cemetery in Montreal. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened to Jun Lin's family. But I do also want to talk about something before that to kind of set up my case for what's happening. The Canadian press created some controversy by naming Luka Magnotta as the Canadian Newsmaker of the Year. He's likely printed that out and framed it. That's disgusting. Jun Lin's university actually created an award though to honor his life, and there was also a candlelit vigil for Jun Lin. And during the trial, apparently people on both sides, so on the defense and on the family side, passed out, collapsed during evidence. It took the jury 8 days to deliberate, and they came back basically saying that he's guilty. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison, and he did appeal this, but he withdrew his appeal. Luka was also investigated for the 2010 to 2017 Toronto serial killings, but there wasn't enough evidence. And also, we know the way that Luka likes to do things, and he has a very clear-cut pattern. I don't think this quite fits. The point is that Luka's life has not been stunted since being sentenced. In 2015, Luka applied for an online dating website called Canadian Inmates Connect. His profile says that he's looking for a white man between the ages of 28 and 38. He says that his inmate needs to be in good shape, loyal, educated, and financially and emotionally stable. His profile notes that it noted that he was interested in a long-term relationship with an inmate. And since then, Luka Magnotta has become engaged and married to fellow killer and inmate Anthony Jolin. So on all of the paperwork, it says that Luka's mother is the witness, and she has been quoted as saying that even though what Luka did was horrific, that he's still my son. The prison said that they are not allowed to consummate their marriage and that there won't be any sort of reallocation of cells. Barbie, who is Luca's ex-girlfriend, says that this is an absolute joke. She criticizes the justice system and the legal system for allowing this to happen, obviously because this is supposed to be a punishment, and she doesn't think that she's been quoted as saying that this is just another publicity stunt because the press forgot him and he's just trying to find another way to get back into the headlines, and that this is just another show. That's not the only thing that Luca gets to experience in prison. This next part is it baffles me. I don't know if this is just Canada, but all of this has been confirmed. So Luca has been sending letters to people, and one such person has released the letters. There are so many more people that Luca talks to while in prison, but one of these people has released the letters, and the letters have been examined, and obviously the press got a hold of them, and this is what we've learned. Luca describes his prison cell and his prison block as being more like a university setting, like a dorm setting. He says that the doors are open 90% of the time, that he enjoys having artwork up, music, that he has a job in the kitchen, and that he spends most of his time reading, playing music, playing sport, doing art, watching movies, stuff that you and I do every single day. In one of the letters, he is talking about how he recently bought the new Celine Dion album, and that he likes listening to it on his portable radio when he goes out to suntan. When the prison was asked to comment on this, they said that the inmates are allowed to have their own amenities, that they're allowed to have their own TVs and their own radios. They also said that inmates are allowed to wear their own clothing as long as it's not a hazard. And in all of the photos that you see of Luca in his prison cell, which does look like a dorm room, he's wearing Versace shirts, designer things. It's crazy. He's not wearing a prison uniform. He's wearing Versace. And in one of these photos, he's literally sitting next to a convicted pedophile. So the person that he's sitting next to, his friend, is Jonathan LaFrance Rivard. He's a convicted pedophile. On Luca's wall, he has pictures of Marilyn Monroe. He's got fan art. He's got his own art with stupid quotes. And he also writes about learning French, which I think is a huge, huge, huge slap in the face, because when Jun Lin was taking extracurricular courses, he was learning how to speak French before Luca murdered him. In none of these letters to anyone does Luca talk about what he actually did to land him in prison. He never talks about feeling regret. In fact, he complains about things like the chocolate selection in prison. In one of the letters, he's talking about around Valentine's Day, I think it was, to give it context. He wrote that he had asked the prison to stock Ferrero Rochers for Valentine's Day, and the prison said, yes, we'll stock that chocolate, but they didn't end up stocking that particular kind of chocolate. And in the letter, he was like, people are so effing selfish. They said they would, you know, it's just the most stupidest thing in the world. And I just think it's crazy that inmates get access to things like Ferrero Rochers. The prison even has its own convenience store. It literally sells anything that you can imagine. It is a convenience store. It's like a privatized convenience store in the prison. In the letters, it says that his favorite food is actually the food that they're given. They give them Italian food, there's ice cream. He says that he doesn't actually indulge in the convenience store junk food because he says he's watching his diet. He says the only time he breaks his diet is when they have pizza parties. Pizza parties. The prison did comment on this, and their reasoning was that it wasn't takeaway pizza from outside of the prison, that it was actually pizza parties which involved pizzas that they make in the prison cafeteria, as if that makes it any better. His visitors are even allowed to stay and watch movies with him, indulge in snacks with him, listen to music with him, as long as they're on his visitors list, which only requires him filling out a form and adding a new person to his visitor list. Luca also receives money orders and fan mail, and has known to have manipulated quite a lot of fans into giving him money and paying for random things like laser hair removal and dental cosmetic surgery for himself in prison. And when the prison was asked to comment on this, they said the reason they let this happen is because it keeps the inmates calm and creates less of a problem if they're able to talk to fans or talk to people about their problems, or like air out their grievances rather than being aggressive with inmates. One of his pen pals, which I'm assuming is the pen pal who released their letters from him, said that being his pen pal resulted in like a psychological game. They lost sleep, like they said they had sleepless nights, and it resulted in them having an empty bank account. They said that Luca keeps around 15 fans as pen pals, and that he manipulates all of them into getting what he wants from them. They said that he can be demanding at times, and when he doesn't get what he wants, he's passive aggressive. And in terms of the dental cosmetic thing that he had done, that was from a fan who sent him $1,200 into his prison bank account. And another fan spent $5,000 on Luca. And when this pen pal was asked, like, you knew you were being manipulated, why did you let him scam you out of so much money? And the way that this fan or friend, as they like to call themselves, the way that they responded to that was that Luca makes out and seems like most of the time that he is a little boy in need of help and you just want to help him. So I think that plays into a lot of the charm that this young man has on people. And this is where I want to bring you back to Jun Lin. This is where I want to talk to you a little bit about who he was, and what he did for people, and why what we just spoke about in terms of the prison conditions comes around full circle. Jun Lin's parents and family are still grieving, and they've kept this grief mostly to themselves. When all of this stuff about the pen pals, about the marriage and all this kind of stuff came out later on, the press asked for comments and they didn't give comments. The only interview that Jun Lin's family did was an exclusive around the time and before the trial happened, so around the time that they found out. And the reason they did this is because everybody focused on Luca Magnotta. Who is Luca? This whole story is so elaborate and it's so full of disgusting, crazy things, and everybody focused on Luca. Nobody focused on who Jun Lin was. And to this day, almost every single video, every single documentary on this case has maximum 1 minute about the victim. And you really don't get to know who Jun Lin was. And really, most of the time that they're talking about the victim, they're only talking about pretty minor facts, and they're talking about the family's reaction. So that's also another reason that they came out and they did this one exclusive, because they wanted to talk about who Jun Lin was and what he meant to them. She said that Jun Lin loved to sing and dance. She remembers when he was growing up, when they lived in a place that didn't have any transport, and so her husband, Jun Lin's father, added a seat to the back of their bike so that he could ride around and the whole family would be together. And she said that Jun Lin loved this. Jun Lin grew up as a child who was super curious about everything. He wanted to know how everything worked and he wanted to learn. He was hungry for knowledge. And that's why when he said, "Mum, I'm moving to Canada, I want to study there," that's why when he said that, she was filled with joy, because he was fulfilling his dreams. He was, you know, fulfilling his want to learn, his curiosity. The way that Jun Lin's father found out was that his niece said, you need to look at the computer. They didn't believe that this was Jun Lin. His mother begged people, stop asking me questions. That's not my son. You're mistaken. That's not my son. But when it confirmed to be Jun Lin, she said that she like collapsed. She said that it hurt that it was filmed and it was posted on the internet and people were watching it over and over. And she said it felt like Jun Lin was being murdered again and again. She said that it was like this unbearable pain and that she didn't understand because Jun Lin was so passionate about life, about living, about, you know, he just saw the beauty in everything. And his nickname was Pistachio. And the reason that this was his nickname was because he was the type of person who would literally just burst out in happiness and laughter randomly. She said that the thing that she couldn't get past was the fact that his death had to include so much suffering for him before he died. She said that she still believes that people are mostly good, but that she lives in fear. And the family felt pressure from, you know, their friends and family back in China who were saying that they needed to bring Jun Lin back to China because every fallen leaf needs to be returned to the root of the tree, and that is a Chinese tradition. It's part of their culture. And they thought about it, but because Jun Lin loved Canada and he was so excited to be there and he, you know, it was his dream, they honored him by allowing his cremated remains to stay in Canada. They wanted to keep that memory, that passion for life alive. After they did that one interview, they had to check out of the hotel that they were staying at in Canada. And the Chinese community in Canada were helping them. They were offered places to stay. I'm not entirely sure where they're at these days. It's been some years since this happened and they've been so private again in their grief, in their circumstance, that there's no trace really of how they're doing. The only updates you ever get on this case are about what Luke is doing and what his, you know, his marriage and all of these things that keep popping up about him and his antics. And even though his parents didn't believe that the meeting between Jun Lin and Luka Magnotta was sexual, we're going to talk about Jun Lin's partner, the partner that he had broken up with merely a week and a half before he was slain. Feng Lin was with Jun Lin from late 2010 to mid-May 2012. The way that Feng describes Jun Lin was that he was very into fitness. He didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he didn't do drugs. He was very health conscious and the pair loved each other. He said that even though Jun Lin knew that his parents weren't accepting, or were more so that his parents were expecting him to marry a woman, he was open to Feng's parents. Like, he had already met Feng's parents, even though the two weren't, you know, parading around being like, this is our relationship, because obviously both of them are from a culture that, you know, aren't fully embracing it right now. Feng and Jun Lin were still open to Feng's parents, just not Jun Lin's parents. In the trial, Luca's attorneys went in on Feng. They were basically saying, you know, what was your sex like? And Feng was like, our sex was normal. They were like, well, was Jun Lin into bondage? Was he into pornography? And Feng was like, no, our sex was normal, not that I'm aware of. And this is when Luca's attorneys brought up, I think there were 2 porn videos on Jun Lin's computer, and they were pretty average gay porn videos. It wasn't anything crazy, but they brought up still images from this porn video, or from these 2 porn videos. They had stupid titles to them. They're not worth mentioning, but they brought up stills and they made Feng Lin look at them. And this is when this is when Feng Lin turned to the judge and he was like, do I have to look at these pictures? Is this necessary? You know, because Luca's defense attorneys are basically torturing this poor man who has just lost the love of his life in the most humiliating, degrading, depraved, sickening circumstances. And then Luca's attorneys were like, well, did you know that Jun Lin was on dating websites? And Feng Lin was like, we had broken up. He was a free man. He was allowed to. It doesn't change anything. But the defense attorneys for Luca Magnotta were trying to make out that Jun Lin was into porn and was promiscuous. None of that justifies what happened to him. It's not relevant. But they still pushed on. Around the time that Jun Lin went missing, Feng was actually returning to Canada. And he said that he did see headlines about a body that was found, but he didn't think anything of it. It was only when he was sent a video. I think this was when he was either landing or he was in transit, but he was sent the video. And it was sent by a friend, and he said that he didn't believe that that was Jun Lin. So Jun Lin touched so many people. He had so many friends to the point where they actually took initiative. I don't think my friends, if I went missing, or at least was just, you know, not in contact with anyone for a couple of days, I don't believe that my friends would actually come to my apartment or go to the lengths that Jun Lin's friends did so quickly. They were so concerned about a friend who didn't reply. Jun Lin also had a lover, a partner who he loved, who loved him, who he didn't feel that, you know, they were allowed to get married, but they still were texting each other up to 50 times a day, sending each other good morning text messages, up until the point that Luca murdered him, up until the very day that Luca murdered him. He also had a little sister. He also had a mother and father who refers to him as Pistachio. Jun Lin's mother and little sister didn't attend the trial. Only Jun Lin's father attended the trial, and at some point during the evidence phase, he was seen exiting and leaving the courtroom in tears, and he didn't return to the trial until 4 days later. 10 months after the trial, Jun Lin's father came out and said that his wife has lost the will to live. She is no longer interested in life and that she is no longer the same. But during sentencing for the trial, Jun Lin's father wrote an impact statement, and I'm going to read parts of it because I think it actually shows this whole thing coming full circle. So in the victim impact statement, Jun Lin's father said, "The night that Jun died, many other people died in other ways." He said his mother, sister, and himself lost a lifetime of hope in one night. He said that his wife is not the same anymore. He says that Jun's sister tries to take care of her, but his wife is too sad. He says that his daughter now has too many responsibilities for someone so young. He said that after spending time in Canada, he now understands why his son was so drawn to it. And he says that he's saddened to learn that his son actually made plans to live in Canada permanently and start a business, and that he's never going to get to accomplish that now. Jun's father mentioned that he turned 60 before the trial and that his wife turned 60 shortly after the trial started. And he also mentions that Jun Lin's birthday is on December 30th, which is also my birthday. And he says that all they got for their birthday was misery and pain. Possibly the saddest thing from this victim impact statement was he says that Luca would be cut off from family, perhaps feel regret, and be limited in his movements by being sentenced to prison. He says that Luca Magnotta's fate is much like their fate as a family, as they've been cut off from Jun and no longer have a desire for anything. He says that Luca will additionally be housed, have a bed provided for him, have food prepared for him, have doctors listen to him when he feels sad. He says no one will house us, no one will feed us or provide us with doctors. He says that he came to the trial in hope of an apology, but instead leaves with nothing. This impact statement was made at trial, and this was before we knew anything about what Luke is doing in prison now, before we knew about him getting married and having pizza parties and complaining about chocolate and scamming people, fans, out of money, having laser hair removal, everything that we mentioned earlier. These words happened before we knew what Luke is up to in prison. Jun and Feng will never get to marry. It's quite possible that they may have had a future together had they had more time. They may have ended up back together. But either way, we'll never know. Jun will never know. Feng will never know. They didn't get that opportunity to get back together. Jun Lin's family are going to have to live knowing that not only did their son die in the most horrific, disgusting, and depraved ways, but that their son's kindness was taken advantage of, and that this crime was filmed and put on the internet for people to make reaction videos to, for people to focus solely on Luka Magnotta's stupid life. And basically their son and his impact on other people's lives has just become a footnote in the Luka Magnotta case. He was the kind of guy who took extra classes, who wanted to learn, who had a passion for life. He was the kind of guy who would help people, even if they were just strangers. He was happy to help people. Jun Lin loved going to Korean barbecue with his friends and playing his favorite Chinese card game. Jun Lin was cared for and cared for other people. He had aspirations. He wanted to stay in Canada permanently, as we've just found out. I don't believe in capital punishment. I don't believe in the death penalty. But I don't believe that the life that Luka Magnotta is living now is any form of punishment. I don't know what is happening with Jun Lin's family. Again, they've kept their grief very private. I would love an update. Again, I know that when all of this was happening, they had to check out of their hotel. We know that Jun Lin sent money back to his family to support his little sister and his parents. We know that since the trial, I want to know that they're okay, but at the very least, I wanted this case to focus primarily, or at least more so to the most extent that I could possibly make it, to focus on Jun Lin. Because he seemed like such a nice guy. And this case is such a disgusting... I just wanted this case to focus on more on Jun Lin. I wanted you guys to feel this loss because there are real people in this, and Jun Lin shouldn't be a footnote in the case of Luka Magnotta. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It really does help. I hope you guys feel a little less alone on Halloween if you don't have anyone that you're spending it with, if you're not going out. Really proud of this case because I wanted it to focus on Jun Lin. If you like these videos, if you like true crime videos in the way that I do them, feel free to join our true crime tribe thing. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.